Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests and SMEs. We are truly happy and humbled that you have joined us. This webinar, as stated, is a partnership between Invest in Africa and Sandy. Sandy are our partner and a member of our network, and truly at this particular point when we are facing disruption, it is a great privilege for us to be sharing a platform with Sandy to talk to you about how we can overcome supply chain disruptions. So before we begin, for those that may be new to Invest in Africa, allow me to just talk about and introduce our initiative and talk about who we are. We are a private sector partnership initiative of organizations that are working to drive economic growth and job creation by counseling small and medium enterprises, SMEs. As we all know, SMEs drive the economies of Kenya and also in Africa, in Sub-Sahara. The world economy is purely driven by SMEs, and therefore their success is so important as the greatest job creators. So our initiative purely is laser focused on SMEs and providing opportunities that enable them to create jobs. And we're working in 5 African countries. We have our presence in Ghana, in Senegal, in Mauritania, in Zambia, and in Kenya. So we are working with the mission of enabling trade between SMEs and multinationals and large organizations. So we intervene in 3 ways: by improving access to skills, as you can see from the initiatives right there, access to markets, and access to finance. And this slide outlines what we've been able to achieve through this particular initiative. So to date, in Kenya, we've managed to train over 1,000 SMEs, and 63 of these have been globally certified in anti-bribery, and this enables them to work with multinationals across the supply chains, corporates that have very high standard requirements. We have 4,000 SMEs across markets on our network, and through these SMEs, we've enabled market linkages and contracts won or awarded worth $154 million. And then we also have been working, participating with organizations in the financial sector, banks, impact investors, to improve access to finance. And so to date, we facilitated over $5.8 million of trade finance to SMEs winning contracts. And we are proud to date to state that over 1 million has been financed by has been linked to women SMEs, or the WSMEs, or women-led businesses, particularly in Kenya. This is a huge milestone for us that we're really proud of, given that we are operating in an era where we are trying to promote women in business, and even banks and institutions are now responding to that particular need. So that is who we are as Invest in Africa, and our entire delivery is done on a technology platform called Bashara.now. This is what is visible to a lot of organizations in Kenya across markets. It's our platform, it's our technology platform called the African Partner Pool, which brings together everybody. So on markets, our partners who buy from SMEs post tenders that may be exclusive, others could be offtake opportunities, so which our members are able to view and respond to. And this enables them to transparently, ethically do business directly in a very seamless way. We've created a very, very robust platform that conducts end-to-end procurement processes for businesses, enabling them to deliver this on real time, and we track and trend everything that happens on the platform. So we vet you as an SME. When you register, we run through your documents, we undertake a due diligence to list you as a credible business, and our partners are able to find credible SMEs when they're looking to source for goods and services locally. Within the platform also there's an academy or a hub called the Bashara Academy, where as a member you can access toolkits, knowledge, best practice guides, videos, and content to support you as a business. And at this particular time, we have a toolkit for SMEs that is available on this hub, and this is a service that is free for our members. And then thirdly is that we've also created a network, a community where you can connect with the other entrepreneurs. At the moment, we have 2,500 SMEs registered from Kenya, and across markets, I think there could be about 5,000. We've got different groups of businesses that you can collaborate, you can promote your products, you can share your knowledge, your experience, and it just works like LinkedIn or another Facebook, where you can be able to drive your business. So as an organization, Invest in Africa is supporting entrepreneurs in different ways. So during COVID, we have evolved our business model to respond to the needs of businesses because of the realities that we are experiencing. And as we move on, we are talking about supply chains being disrupted. There are a lot of challenges. Businesses have to pivot. You have to rethink your value proposition. There's new set of risks. We are facing a crisis, so we have to completely rethink our business. So we are supporting organizations in very many different ways as an organization. So as Invest in Africa, so one is that we are providing webinars. We are providing the toolkit, the survival COVID toolkit. So our webinar is part of our COVID-19 SME survival program that we launched in April this year. And on our platform, we've also come up with a COVID-19 supplier search function, where if you're a member of our network or even without, and you're providing essential COVID supplies, maybe you're producing masks, you have products, gadgets that corporates can use to help in responding to this, there is a specific hotline or it's a highlight that we have created as a function that we're sharing with corporates who are looking to procure quickly. Maybe you have gloves or whatever it is, medical equipment specifically for COVID, or you're able to package products, goods to help corporates that are responding with their community programs. Talk to us. This is a service that you can take advantage of. And like we said, for now, the platform is offering a free membership because it is COVID time. And lastly, we are engaging stakeholders, government, donors, development finance institutions on what policies, what measures, what initiatives or interventions can be developed or crafted to help SMEs who are an important constituent of the economy at this particular time. So mine is to really welcome you and thank you very, very much for attending this webinar, which is targeting organizations in retailing, manufacturing, agribusiness, and any organization. You could be making products at home, and our aim is to talk to you about how you can overcome the disruption, because the disruption is real. We'll be getting a very detailed presentation on the impacts with data from Sandy this morning, and the objectives of this webinar is to enable you to adapt to the realities and to help you to minimize the risks on moving your products across the supply chain. There are very many risks, and particularly now that we have to depend on third-party issues and navigate on dynamics and decision-making processes on your supply chain. So we are very happy to be joined by our partner, Sandy, and today we have an expert, Glenn Ogola, who is the Enterprise Marketing and Growth Hack Associate at Sandy Limited. So first of all, he's a supply chain expert, so very, very well versed to cover this particular topic. So let me welcome Glenn, and over to you. Enjoy the webinar and please engage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wangeshi. Thank you for the great introduction. I'll simply jump into it, and then I'll explain what Sandy does towards the end of my presentation. COVID has had a marked influence on the supply chain over the last few months, especially over the last 2 months, with it having landed in Kenya. And it's a global problem, but at the same time, it's also a local issue. And globally, we can just look at the effects in three categories. So there's disruption of the global value chain, where you find that supply chains globally are linked because of international trade, and you find that, for instance, for the source of the pandemic, that is China. China is the largest exporter globally, and it's also one of the largest markets for goods in the world. But then they've had to be in lockdown since the beginning of the year, and they're only now this month towards the end of last month starting to let up the restrictions and making and facilitating trade. But you find that a lot of manufacturers were hit because they couldn't access the raw materials and finished goods, and they could not export their goods to that market. Another thing is air travel has been significantly limited. IATA estimates that 50% of all air travel has ceased over this year as a result of COVID, and this generally has caused an economic downturn. The World Bank estimates that over this year, more than 170 countries expect to have slower economic growth compared to the previous year. And specifically, this year, the estimation for growth for the global economy is actually negative 3.8%. So the economy is expected to contract as a result of this pandemic. And so, just looking at it locally, we've seen, for instance, that there's a restriction in movement of goods and people across the country. For instance, there are geographic lockdowns. Mombasa, Nairobi, Kilifi, and Kwale. Movement has been restricted to only essential goods moving in and out of the counties, but people are not allowed to. There's been a dawn to dusk curfew since the middle of last month, and it was just extended this week for another 21 days. There's also been limited international trade. For instance, all international flights are now restricted. We've seen that the borders with Somalia and Tanzania have been closed, and even with Uganda, movement of goods has been very restricted, with the Ugandan government insisting on things like shifting drivers so that they avoid people from Kenya bringing in COVID into their own countries. Same thing for Rwanda, where Rwanda has now completely stopped, is not even allowing changeover of crew, and it's only allowing transshipping. That is, you bring the goods up to the Rwandan border, and the Rwandan transporter picks it up from the border to where it needs to go. So international trade has been strongly limited as a result of this. And then also, public gatherings have been stopped, and we've seen this has severely impacted, the need for social distancing has severely impacted the restaurant and recreation industries. But even aside from that, people like retailers have had to put restrictions on social distancing, how far customers can stay close to each other in the queue, how many customers they can have, and such. So it's become a lot harder to do business this year. For the sectors that I've mentioned, that's tourism and travel, manufacturing, retailers, restaurants. But for this specific day, for this webinar, we look at three industries specifically: manufacturing, we look at retail, and agribusiness, and how they're adapting to this situation. So these specific industries are best placed to use COVID as a means of propelling themselves forward, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. So first, how has COVID affected manufacturers? The first thing is it has diminished demand for non-essential goods, where, for instance, Deloitte estimates that household spending has dropped by 50% over this time for two reasons. A, there's been more layoffs over this time. For instance, the flour industry has had to lay off 70,000 workers just over these few months because of COVID, because the exports have dropped. So layoffs mean that the consumer has less money in their pocket, and everybody else is worried about how much money they'll have for the future. So spending has reduced by half, and as a result of reduced spending and demand for non-essential goods at least, there's been slower production, and also production has been slowed due to a need for maintaining social distance within the factory floor. So the factory floor operations are designed to have more people packed in, but because there's been less people on the floor, you find that production has become slower. Movement or access to markets has been restricted because of what we've just discussed, such as the lockdowns, the curfews, the lockdowns and restrictions from other countries have limited the ability of manufacturers to access these markets. And then finally, even bringing in raw materials has been a problem because there's a need for increased screening at points of entry like the port and the airports, and this has slowed down the movement of goods. So for retailers, the first biggest effect of COVID is it has reduced footfall to physical stores because more and more people are starting to realize the need to maintain social distance, even as much as they still need access to the essential goods. More people are shifting away from buying things from the physical store and getting things delivered to them. And then aside from this, where there's harder the access to goods to be sold within the supermarkets has become slightly more difficult because of the restrictions in movement. But on the flip side, the need for essential goods has exploded. For instance, when the lockdown was initially announced, we remember how empty the aisles for food, cooking oil, toilet paper were all empty because there was a mad dash to buy essential goods before the lockdown came into place, and that is still something that we're seeing among our retail clients right now. More and more, the essential goods are selling out faster than unessential goods. And then obviously people are buying more online. People are becoming more aware of the need to purchase things online so as to limit exposure to the disease. For instance, for us, Tuskies came to us because their customers were asking for an online solution to get goods from them because they wanted to maintain social distance, but at the same time access the goods that they needed. And for agribusiness, there's diminished access to international markets. For instance, as I'd explained, it's more difficult to access markets like Tanzania, Rwanda, because there's limitation as to how far the transporters can go across border. And then, despite this, because more people are home for longer, there's actually been an increased demand for food produce because aside from people trying to buy what they need now, people are trying to stock up because they're worried about their future. So demand has increased in that respect. But there's also been a limited access to raw materials. For instance, in the milling sector, where we serve a number of millers, we've noticed that access for them for raw materials such as maize and wheat has been restricted because for imports there's more screening at the port, and this has slowed down movement and clearing of these imports as a result. And I believe at some point last week there was a press release by the Cereal Millers Association saying that the prices might actually go up as a result of their inability to get raw materials fast enough to cover the increase in demand. So problems are problems, but that's just life. Businesses need to adapt to survive this pandemic. We will realize that many businesses will die over this period, but despite that, for us who are in the field, it is absolutely essential that we survive. And survival, not only survive, but thriving is entirely possible. And this is how the various sectors can adapt to this pandemic going forward. So for retailers, the first way is get your goods online. I think something we've realized over these last 3 months, especially, is the Kenyan retail sector, despite having online solutions, there was a reticence, a reluctance to move goods online because there was enough footfall. Most of their sales came from the footfall to their stores. So the push has mostly so far been in opening new stores in different locations to drive sales. But now that there's the need for social distance, there's a scramble for people to get on online platforms such as Sendigo. We've seen Quickmart get on board. We've seen Tuskies get on board, I believe, and a number of other retailers as well. And then there's a need to limit the cost of moving goods. So more and more retailers are starting to leverage third-party logistics more. That is, using third-party logistics is hiring someone else to move your goods. We're seeing a greater adoption of that by retailers. And then aside from that, there's the need to embrace cashless payments so that there's limited exposure to COVID. We know that COVID is spread by droplets on surfaces, on money, proximity to other people, and so as one of the precautions, cashless payments are encouraged, and also businesses need to embrace contactless delivery, fast delivery, because customers are not going to come to your physical store. Businesses need to find a solution to get your goods from the store to the customer's doorstep, and even at the customer's doorstep to limit interactions between the person delivering the goods and the customer themselves to avoid spread of the virus. And then businesses also need to leverage the existing customer networks to sell, because something that would have been taken lightly before was the interaction between customers and the business, which often drove sales, especially for smaller retailers. But now that the customer is less able to physically come to where the retailer is, constant communication with the customers will be valuable. Social media is one way of doing this. There's WhatsApp for business as another way of reaching these customers. But even then, there's also maintaining contact in terms of phone calls, text messages on what products you have available, just to stay top of mind since the customer is far away from you. And then and then on top of all this, your staff still serves customers on a regular basis. The staff for retailers package the goods, they handle the money. There's still possibility that there could be vectors for spreading the disease to your customers. So it is important to constantly monitor the health of staff. For instance, with Sandy, we do temperature checks every morning for all the staff that go to the office, and we also do the same for our delivery partners, so that we make sure that we don't endanger customers. For manufacturing, the most important thing right now is managing the cost, because as I noted earlier in the presentation, the economy is expected to contract. In Kenya, the growth will only be 1%. So there'll be slowdown in the economy over the next year. And we are not entirely sure how long it'll take before there's growth again. So right now, the most important thing is to manage costs and become as efficient as possible. So the first way of managing costs is embracing third-party logistics to increase fleet flexibility. What this means is simply that maintaining an in-house fleet is more expensive now, considering that sales might be dropping for you. But then using third-party logistics means you only pay for the marginal cost of moving goods. That is, you only pay when you need to move something. Otherwise, you don't need to pay for fuel or for a driver or for space to park the trucks that you have. So embracing third-party logistics is one way of keeping the cost low. And then something else we've found is as local associations for manufacturers and businesses have been vital in maintaining mobility for manufacturers. For instance, CAM and KEPSA are providing their members with stickers that identify the members as essential services. So what this has done is it enables their fleet to operate outside curfew hours, but aside from that, it also enables them to operate outside the lockdown geographies, so that the goods can move in and out of places like Nairobi, Mombasa, Kilifi, and so forth. So the other thing is, aside from getting into these associations, a shorter way is using third-party logistics providers who also have this certification. For instance, Sandy has this certification because we are a delivery service, and under the Gazette notice that created the lockdown, delivery services are essential services basically. And the last point for maintaining efficiency is to make sure you have accurate data for tracking where bottlenecks are in your supply chain so that you drive down cost as much as possible. And for the agribusiness sector, the most important thing here is to leverage suppliers, leverage relationships. So we've noticed actually for agribusiness, the problem is not that demand is going down or that there isn't market or people are unwilling to spend. It is more that agribusiness is an essential good. Everyone needs food, so demand is spiking. But on the flip side, meeting that demand by getting in raw materials and then getting your goods to customers is the actual challenge. So in this sector, first thing is leveraging third-party logistics to add to the capacity of your supply chain. And then the other thing is getting transporters who can service orders cross-border. For instance, there's the need to switch over that Uganda has been pushing for. That is when the vehicle gets to the border at Malaba, a Ugandan driver takes over who's been tested and doesn't have COVID to take the goods into the country. But this becomes a challenge when you're only using a local service provider, because then they have no relationships across the border to get drivers that you can trust. And then there's also the need to consolidate, like picking up produce from various localities where agriculture takes place, either to the factory, to transport them to the factories where processing is done. And third-party logistics can help in consolidating this safely without you having to increase the size of your fleet. So the challenge you're having now is COVID, yes. But if you are asked let's say in May last year, what your biggest problem would be in 2020, it would have been nothing close to a virus threatening the whole world's health. That would not have been one of your guesses. So risks come and go. COVID is our problem today, but there most certainly will be other problems, probably worse pandemics, maybe political instability or an economic downturn. So businesses if once we have survived COVID, we need to be adept at being prepared for the worst. So how can you manage your supply chain risk? So risks can be classified into two. So either it's a known risk, those that you can predict, or unknown risks, those that you cannot predict. So for the known risks, a known risk you can measure and can be managed over time. And to deal with them, the first thing is you collect as much data on your supply chain as possible, so you have visibility on everything that could possibly go wrong. Then the second thing is to have cross-functional teams to catalog or to compile a list of these risks. The reason for having a cross-functional team is risks come from different aspects of your business. It can be from the marketing side, depending on customer perception, from the supply chain and logistics side, depending on the people who are moving your goods or your own fleet. So you have to have a cross-functional team to catalog these risks. And then aside from this, you also need to have a risk management framework, a plan on how to deal with each risk. And this means you detail how likely the risk is, what its possible impact would be on your business, and measures to mitigate each. But then there's always the unknown risks, for instance, like COVID, which could not have been foreseen in any way. And how do we deal with unknown risks? The most important thing is to make sure that your processes are as efficient as possible, so that when a shock hits, your business is resilient enough to survive it. So to optimize your processes, the first thing is you need to define what the performance standards are across all the various functions of your supply chain. That is to your fleet, if you have an in-house fleet, or to your service providers that you're using within the factory, in your procurement department, when they're getting suppliers, how diversified is your source of raw materials, how diversified is your source of goods, how diversified are your markets. That has to be on point for unknown risks. And then there needs to be open communication between teams so that when something does go wrong, you catch it quickly. So down to Sandy. So Sandy is an e-logistics platform that connects businesses to vetted couriers and transporters. What this means is simply that we are an online service. We have a web platform and an app from which you can make requests for whatever vehicles you need to move goods on demand. For instance, we have trailers, that is 28-ton trucks, which we found are mostly used by our agribusiness customers. And then for retail and manufacturing, we found they mostly use our trucks, that is trucks from the size of 14 ton all the way to pickups and vans. And they're also bikes for reaching customers. So I think we can start with the questions. Wangeshi?
Okay. Thank you very, very much, Glenn. This has been quite heavy, but I'm getting to also learn a couple of things. I'm glad that you've been able to speak to the retailers, organizations in retail, organizations in manufacturing, and in agribusiness. So, as we mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, or our distinguished participants this morning, the conversation is about how we can overcome, how we can manage. And Glenn has taken us through different strategies on how we can be able to adapt. So whether you are in a retailer, and for retailers, we're learning that how to adapt is by limiting human contact and points of sale. We need to get online, we need to leverage on third-party logistics, and embrace social media. If you are in manufacturing, the strategy is to manage costs and to manage these third-party logistics companies. For agribusiness, let's leverage on relationships and cultivate direct contact with customers. So he's taken us through a couple of suggestions and ideas and insights. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it's now time to ask questions. Okay, so I think there is a question on what is the process of joining Sandy's e-commerce platform?
Thank you, Angashi. So there's two ways in which you can join the e-commerce platform. So the first way is Sandy has an API which you can use to integrate. If you already have an e-commerce platform, that is a website from which you're selling goods, you can simply integrate our API, and what that will do is you can automatically, when a customer places an order, there's a Sandy API you can integrate with your e-commerce platform, by which allows customers to get deliveries sent to them directly. So once they place an order with you, it simply shows up as an order on our system as well, and the driver comes, picks the goods up from you, and takes it to the customer's doorstep. Another way would be signing up for a new service, that is SendyGo. And how you do that is SendyGo, which is a new online shopping platform where you can open up a store, and then you have customers buy from you directly, and then Sandy takes care of the delivery part. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And there's still another question. What does it cost to set up an online store on SendyGo?
So there is no upfront cost on SendyGo. There is no upfront cost. I believe there's a commission to it on actual sales and a delivery fee that is charged to the customer. But this is on a negotiation basis, so you'd have to talk to the team. Again, if you're interested, simply reach out after this conversation. On the API itself, there are no charges upfront for integrating with the API. You'll simply be charged for the deliveries that will be done by customers once the API is integrated, but there's no upfront cost. I'm seeing Doris's question as well. What are the prices like? So the prices are negotiable, but mostly it's based on distance. And then on the type of vehicle you're using. So for instance, a bike can't cost the same as a pickup, so to speak. And then, but for the pricing, if you reach out directly, there's a base rate, but then it's also slightly negotiable. So it's not something I can comment on directly. It depends on the kind of goods you're moving and how regularly you are moving these goods. And yes, we do provide tracking. We track goods. You can track goods in real time on Sendy, on the either on the app or on the web platform. So you can track goods in real time, and then you can get all the data on your logistics on a dashboard of your business account. Yes, goods are definitely insured on transit. The goods are insured on transit up to, it depends with the type of vehicle that you're getting. But if you're getting the trailers, for instance, the insurance can go up to 10 million. It depends with the type of vehicle and the value of goods that you have, that you're carrying. But yes, goods are insured.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue asking questions. There's a question on payment methods. Glenn?
So there's if depending on the volumes, you can depending on the volumes that you're moving, there are business accounts where you can get billed monthly, and then you pay via check or cash transfer, or you can pay as you use the service using card or M-Pesa.
So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, so this is again a great pleasure to have hosted you as Invest in Africa, and a special thanks to Glenn for sharing knowledge. We are leaving this with knowledge on how we can adapt, whether you are a manufacturing enterprise or you are a retailer or a company in agribusiness. And we do welcome you to please join us and connect with us. On Facebook, we are Invest in Africa Kenya. On Twitter, it's IIA Kenya, and our hashtag for the day is IIA Webinar Series. Follow us on LinkedIn. We want to remain connected during these particular times, and let's keep the conversation going. So, in case you want to contact us, that's the contact. Once again, we want to thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's connect again. Please give us feedback and have a lovely week, and God bless you all. Thank you.